All right, you guys, we're back in Santa Monica with Dr. Rand after a quick trip to Vegas for the Super Bowl pre party that actually we actually had over there. Yeah, he was nice enough to invite me over there, so we get to meet a lot of players and at Top Golf, and we spent a good amount of hours over there. It was great. How was that for you, Dr. Rand? Was a little weird? It was a little weird to see you over there instead of Santa Monica.
Well, yeah, Las Vegas, with all due respect to those of you that live there, not my favorite town, simply because never been big on smoke, whether it be cigarette smoke or marijuana smoke. Now it seems to be full of over there. Maybe not in the casinos, but it seems to be everywhere. And I'm not sure if it's because it's legalized now or not. Nothing against or for marijuana, but yeah, at this particular event, though, we were nowhere near the casinos or anything like that. And it was a blast, quite frankly. I mean, you could tell we were having fun.
You seem to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, meeting the guys that are actually down there on the gridiron playing ball, and from a lot of good teams. You know, obviously, the two teams that were in the Super Bowl were not represented there, but we met a lot of guys, who were active. Some retired too, but it was fun to meet them because you could see them, literally eye to eye.
Yeah.
And without the pads on, so you could see, okay, these guys are, I wouldn't say of average build. That would be disrespectful because these guys are built, and obviously very, very athletic. But with the exception of some of the lineman guys like Dion from Buffalo and stuff, when you shake hands and look up at them like that, these guys look like, again, not like anybody else, but not freaks of nature like I used to look up to some of these guys back when I was trying to play ball.
Right.
And I wasn't small back then. I was 255 pounds trying out for the Chiefs. But these guys were very, very educated. I found it surprising when it comes to the medicine, whether it would be from, PRP, platelet-rich plasma therapies, or even stem cell or umbilical cord
they were
tissue
aware,
cells.
huh?
Yeah, that was remarkable to me. And a lot of
Nice.
these guys are using these treatments to either prevent, typically recover from injury, but doing it very well. And of course, these guys are great, we'll call them test subjects, because, yeah, they're at the top of the game, their game, both in the real sense, but also health-wise. So we can see that when things are lined up the way they should be, or we like them to be, this stuff works really, really well to heal, meaning whether it's platelet-rich plasma or the umbilical cord tissue or their own natural stem cells. So that was also fun to see, and I hope that because of that, we'll see much more of this, out there to the available to the public. Because, if the athletes are doing it, a lot of times it trickles down to the weekend warriors too,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it works.
Yeah. Awesome. Anyway, so thanks for inviting me. It was a great. And then we're back in Santa Monica. We got some questions for the fans this week.
Yep. So the first one says, "Hello, Dr. Rand. Love the show. Thank you. I have a question about TRT for women. What is your recommendation as far as dosage to get the benefits without the side effects that come with testosterone?" So she has another question, but start there. I'm assuming it's a lady. So with women, it's pretty easy, as with men, to come up with a starting dose that sort of, fits everyone until we find out it doesn't. But instead of a nice, smooth Gaussian curve, it's more of a very steep curve, starting with, if it's an esterified form of testosterone, meaning an injectable form typically, although an esterified form could also be oral, but we really don't have that for women yet, like we do for men, the undecanoate form, for example. But for women, the injectable, we would use a dose of 20 milligrams per ml, or strength of 20 milligrams per ml. 1 ml per week would be the dose. And that tends to fit most of the ladies. And then for a cream or a gel, we would use actually 20 milligrams per ml, but use 1 ml daily.
Wow.
Because it's not time released, it's going to be absorbed pretty quickly. Hence, we have to do it on a daily basis. For ladies, either one of those is equally efficacious and effective, for that matter, because the ladies seem to, for whatever reason, be pretty good about being compliant with a daily dose, where for whatever reason, again, guys...
Because they
guys
they put all kinds of cream all the time.
I
Like,
know.
that's just one more cream for them.
I know. I joke all the time with patients that I really dropped my candy when I didn't buy stock in Sephora, because my wife uses the creams all the time,
It's
and gels
nonstop.
and whatever else.
Yeah.
And we we suffer through even shaving with shaving cream. But yeah, either one of those tends to work really well for the ladies. And as I like to joke, if a patient happens to be what I call an expensive date, burning through this really quickly, metabolizing it, then we can jigger the dose so that maybe she might use a higher dose or more frequency, particularly when it comes to injectables.
What do you prefer? So you would give them like one shot every 5 days instead of 7 days, or increase the dosage? Which is better?
I have to admit that a lot of my response is going to be based on just a personal bias with experience that doesn't necessarily bear out my rationale because I've seen success with simply increasing the dose.
Okay.
Every 7 days. In other words, instead of 1 ml, use 1.25 mLs. I'm one of the first to tell you, don't chase numbers. Treat people, not numbers. But I would prefer to inject more frequently the same dose simply because you're going to have less of a peak and trough, less variability of the titer during the week. And though when I say that, as I said so many times, as long as you're above that therapeutic range, you should have the resolution of symptoms that you're looking for. That said, it's the metabolites, which actually goes into the next part of her question, or actually some of the first part. That's what I would be more concerned with, not the resolution of symptoms, but the conversion to other androgens, for example, dihydrotestosterone or more estrogen than you might want on board. And that swing, or those swings, I should say, that can affect you more than just the testosterone, going up and down to a greater extent. So that would be my rationale, that I actually can stick to my guns on that a little bit and have a decent, backing for that statement. But excuse me. Speaking of that, when this person asks about the side effects, the side effects aren't really typically from testosterone, but from metabolites of testosterone, like the dihydrotestosterone I mentioned. When in excess, dihydrotestosterone, because it's more potent than is testosterone, and estimates range from 2 to 5 times more potent, depending upon which androgen receptor is being affected. It can come with side effects, typically acne, hair in the wrong places, actually hair loss in the places where you want to keep it on your head, similar to a male. So that's something we might have to regulate if you're one of, I'd say, probably at least 20% of the individuals that does suffer side effects from this excess dihydrotestosterone. It's very easy to treat by using something that blocks the conversion from testosterone to excess dihydrotestosterone. The other metabolite that we tend to have an issue with, more males than females, but still with females because, again, everyone's different. Women, because of their design, are able to tolerate estrogen typically a lot better than males. But excess estrogen can make you moody, irascible, make you hold water and fat. So that's something we also need to watch out for. But again, it's not because of the testosterone per se, it's because of the metabolite. So when we're using TRT, that's something we have to take into consideration to avoid the side effects. The other question she asked here is also, what age would be the best time to start? That's a tough one. By definition, I think still, perimenopause starts at age 35, just a definition where the hormones start to go south. Just like with males, that age can be brought on sooner in the sense of, not the age itself, but the effects that would normally be attributed at age 35 by stress. Stress makes things, the wheels fall off the wagon a lot sooner that way. And I can't give you an age per se, except by the official definition. But as I've said earlier, you treat people, not numbers. So you might have a gal come in who, I've talked about this before. She's got 6 kids. She's from another country, so she's in a new country here trying to adjust. God forbid she's divorced on top of that, meaning she doesn't have, the other spouse to help take care of the kids, and she's working 3 jobs or whatever it is. Yeah. That will advance the decline in hormones much more quickly. So instead of 35, it happens at 30. So I can't give you an exact age as to the best time to start, but I would say the time at which your hormones start to go south and you experience the decline in function and sense of well-being that comes with those hormones going south. And typically the first one to go south is testosterone, and the last one, and it kind of fits in with the cascade, right, from cholesterol down to estrogen, is estrogen.
What's the youngest female you ever had coming to your office to get treated?
Probably about 26. I couldn't tell you for sure.
Wow, okay.
I've seen plenty of patients even younger than that.
Wow.
But we figure out another way to deal with it, whether it's to, relieve stress. Typically, we can't move to Bali and hang out on the beach and let our body recover. But there's times where you go through lots of different testing. Well, for example, if there were it's called a pituitary, and you know what the pituitary gland is from back in high school. That's probably one thing you remember from biology or physiology. The master gland of the human body. If that gets damaged, it's a pituitary microadenoma that can occur sometimes, or just strictly trauma, a head trauma, concussion. Then the signal isn't being sent to the ovaries to make, or other parts of the body to make the hormones, or that the pituitary makes some hormones itself. So that requires replacement typically. Sometimes we can find a way to get the ovaries to make the hormones, but that's easier done in a male, where we can nudge the testicles to do their job, whereas for ovaries it's a little more difficult. But I guess 26 would be probably the earliest that I can recall I've ever had to come across that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Doc. All right, what do we have next?
Next question says, "What's up, Doc and Dave? I have a question about Winstrol. Is it possible to get it legally here in the United States? And what's your opinion about it?" The answer to that is it is possible to get Winstrol if you own a horse.
Oh,
so
Winstrol V.
Right, exactly. Winstrol V. It's an injectable form of Winstrol. It's a suspension, so it's not an oil base. You got to shake it, and you got to use a fairly large needle, which is, if you're a horse, doesn't matter so much. But if you're a human, I think you need at least like a 22 gauge needle.
Why?
Even that
Why do you need it so big?
Because they don't grind it small enough, I guess, or
stuck.
maybe you have to shake the living heck out of it to get it done. But
it gets stuck in the needle. Okay.
You can't get injectable for a human.
Yeah.
So the Winstrol V, as it's known, and by the way, for humans too, although they don't make Winstrol, as far as I know, as a brand anymore. It's called stanozolol. That's the generic
They used
form.
to make it in Spain back in the day. Stramba used to make it.
And wasn't there one made in Italy?
Possibly. They had those little
started with a
green
Z.
boxes with 3,
And you could inject it with a 27 gauge needle. It was an oil base, not an acetate, I think, or a suspension. But yeah, those are long gone. So when we talk about for human use, yes, stanozolol, the generic, is available in this country, but it's rarely used. I mean, most people know about it because of some famous athletes that I won't even mention their name because I don't want to. It has been used in sport, particularly track, because one of the benefits of stanozolol is, one of the indications is for angioedema, and we know from its use that it gets rid of what we call third-spaced water, the water that's not supposed to be there. We call it edema. It's not the water that's supposed to be in the cells. It's inflammatory water, sterile inflammation based water. And so that's a nice little perk. For example, if you are a track athlete, you want to carry as little as possible, extra, right? And I think that's why it's used in sport, against the rules typically. In medicine, I have used it for a gentleman who had chronic kidney failure in association with cachexia. It was very unfortunate. The gentleman, a very proud man too. I mean, and his son came to me with him, and anyway, we found out he was having trouble just getting off the potty. He was so cachexic and weak, and we could kill two birds with one stone by using something which was anabolic to help him build up his muscle mass, so he could have the dignity to get up off the toilet by himself, but also get rid of that extra water as a side benefit. Now, you still got a kidney dysfunction, so how much that effect was actually put into play because his kidneys weren't working. But anyway, it can be, what's the question? Is it legal here? Yes, it is legal to prescribe here in the United States. Is it a good compound? Well, yeah, like so many of these things, when used properly, it's a great compound. It is typically not the first choice for something like wasting disorder, in which case what used to be branded as decadrobolin, for example, known as nandrolone, is a great drug to keep an extra 20, 25 pounds. That would be for a male, well, for anyone, if they need that kind of weight, on your frame, in case, God forbid, you got sick, like an HIV patient, and that's literally life-saving pounds on your frame. But sometimes we'll use oxandrolone, which is also known as Anavar when it was branded. Still, people call it that because that's how people know it. But oxandrolone is a very useful anabolic as well that can put those extra pounds on someone with a wasting disorder. But just different way of doing it. With oxandrolone, you tend to lose a little bit of fat while you're also putting on muscle, and for some, that's like the holy grail.
Of course.
You want to lose fat and put on muscle too. But what I was going to say is that's a close cousin to stanozolol, at least in terms of effect, and the fact that they're both what we call DHT or dihydrotestosterone derivatives, with the Winstrol being one that will help you get rid of that excess water, and the oxandrolone doesn't have that effect. The Winstrol, because it tends to dry you out, we say, I wouldn't recommend it to those that are using it for weightlifting purposes or bodybuilding purposes because of its effect on the tendons. It tends to, we're drying out naturally. We're desiccating, as it were, as we get older. So to add to that a drug that could be supplanted by another one that works just as well, but without decreasing the water or affecting the water balance at all, would be my go-to. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend Winstrol to those people that are using it for that after the age of, say, 35, unless they're particularly careful to increase volume, say, with repetitions rather than heavy weights.
Gotcha.
I guess, sorry, that's not what he
No,
or she asked,
but it's good info.
Little fun fact, I guess.
It's good info, yeah.
So worth taking or not, it depends on what you're using it for, like everything else.
Right. Awesome. Thanks, Doc.